Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Rocket Chiro podcast, the business and marketing podcast for chiropractors. My name's Jerry. I'm your host. I'm a former chiropractor. I help chiropractors now with websites and local SEO. I help new chiropractors get started. I help stuck chiropractors get unstuck, and I host this little podcast. Today, we are going to talk about something that has just been rolling around in my head lately, and maybe, just maybe, I'm the only one that actually cares about this. So sometimes I do a podcast for me. This might be one of those things. However, I do talk to a lot of chiropractors who take advice from very popular people, whether they're in the chiropractic industry or they are out of the chiropractic industry, like kind of spouting their success formula. And they're frustrated with the fact that they're trying to do what this person says. This person makes it sound easy. This person makes it look easy. And they don't really understand why they're so frustrated and why maybe that person's success formula isn't necessarily your success formula or their success formula. So we're going to break that down a little bit to just help you identify some things that are personality driven that you just need to be aware of, things that are not personality driven, and just some of the pros and cons of different personality types. And I don't mean like official personality types. I just mean I'm going to categorize some different chiropractors and some strengths and weaknesses, and hopefully it'll help you identify who are you, kind of where do you fit into this category, and then hopefully at the end of this, you'll just be better equipped to take your practice in a really, really strong, stable direction instead of taking advice from people that maybe you shouldn't be taking advice from. So those are my thoughts. I hope to achieve that on this episode. Now, before I get into all of that, I want to talk to you about your chiropractic website and your local SEO. If you haven't done so yet, you can go to Rocket Chiro and you can request a website and SEO review, and I'll be happy to look at your stuff, give you some recommendations, give you some advice, show you how your website compares to other chiropractors in your area, and talk to you about whether we can work together or not. There's no obligation, there's no pressure, just a lot of really great information, whether you become a client of mine or not. Now, if you are ready to get a better chiropractic website or get help with your local SEO, you could just reach out through Rocket Chiro and let me know, and we can start that conversation, see if we're a good fit for each other, and just kind of go from there. If you're someone who listens to the podcast and you'd like to go beyond the podcast, just get some additional information, get some access to me, and get some help along the way, check out my Next Step program. It's a great kind of month-to-month library kind of resource for chiropractors who are getting started or chiropractors who are feeling stuck that want some help getting unstuck. So all that can be found at rocketchiro.com. Okay, so there's this saying that has been said for a long time. It's the idea of like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And it's, I would say in our day and age where attention is a bit of a currency, that the squeaky wheel oftentimes gets the clicks. The squeaky wheel often gets the likes. There's a particular personality, and I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying that it exists, and there's a charismatic personality trait that tends to rely on storytelling, certainty, and energy to sell themselves and sell their products and services. These are people who they would be good at any sort of front-facing, high visibility, high people contact business. So I'll give you some examples of, if you ever see like a TV evangelist who's raking in all kinds of money and you're like, why in the world are people sending this person money? I guarantee you they're this personality trait. They have this personality trait. You see a salesman who's very, very successful. Like I would say 9 times out of 10, if not more, whether they're selling a house, selling cars, selling jewelry, it doesn't really matter what they're selling. If it is someone who is really, really good at sales, specifically sales, I'm not saying someone who's successful making money. I'm talking about being good at sales, being persuasive. That person probably has this personality trait. Politicians, you'll see it. People that are really good at fundraisers, people that are really good at influencing. You'll see this with like coaching and mentors, people that make the podcasting circuit, people that are in the business and coaching development space. Even this podcast, like my podcast is not a big podcast. And part of the reason for that is because I don't have that personality. And I generally don't bring on people that have that personality trait. So because of that, you end up getting You don't get the momentum that you get on the front end that you get with that personality trait. It's magnetic. It attracts people in, and it has a tremendous amount of benefit. The problem is that not everybody is that personality trait. Not everybody has those skills. Not everybody has those tendencies. And when you have a world of chiropractors where many of them don't have those skills, and they don't have that personality, they don't have those traits, and those people are listening to a podcast, and everybody that comes on the podcast is telling them this, they have this dynamic story, they have this dynamic personality, they have this energy that they're putting out there. When you go to a seminar, and like 9 out of 10 people that you hear from are that kind of magnetic personality, and the one person you hear from that's not that personality is the boring person that's at the seminar, or the boring guest that's on the podcast, or the boring guy that's hosting a podcast. That tends to influence the way that you think about how you should be. Now, if you're the type of person that sort of is natural to you, where you're naturally sort of charismatic and you want to lean into that, then you can be very, very successful in those spaces. And another way that I can kind of describe this is like the multi-level marketing world. Like the multi-level marketing world is sort of notorious for turning and burning people. Can you make a lot of money doing multi-level marketing? Yes, you can. But if you think that anyone can do it, and this is the story that you get told by these people, generally speaking, if I can do it, you can do it. If I can do it, anyone can do it. That's not true. It's just simply not a true statement. It disregards personality. It disregards talent. It disregards opportunity. It disregards timing. There's no possible way that you can say, if I can do it, then you can do it too. If I can do it, then someone else can do it. That is a true statement. But to say I can do it, therefore you specifically can do it, that's not a true statement. It just isn't. But you'll hear this a lot by people who have this personality. You just have to give off this particular energy. You have to say this particular thing. You have to say it with certainty. You just have to. And these people would be successful. The people that are successful in chiropractic who do this are also people that would be successful if they decided to be a preacher, if they decided to be a TV evangelist, if they decided to sell cars, if they decided to sell houses, if they decided to do online coaching and mentoring, like if they decided to be an influencer, they would probably be successful, because that personality trait is rewarded within those spaces. And so the problem is that if you're someone, if it takes personality specific advice from someone who is not, who you don't have that personality trait, that's not your wheelhouse, that's not who you are, and you're taking personality specific advice, you are damning yourself to failure or the frustration of pretending to be somebody else. Now, what I'm not talking about is I'm not talking about habits. I'm not talking about structure. I'm not talking about just being whoever you want to be, however you want to be it. It's like, oh, well, my natural tendency is to fly by the seat of my pants. It's like, well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way that your personality manifests in how you do that structure and how you do those habits. And I'll give you some kind of examples of what I'm talking about. And I just kind of wrote down 3, and I said that there's the personality, kind of the charismatic driven chiropractor. There's the kind of clinical, more technical driven chiropractor. And then there's the chiropractor who's really good at like connections and relationships. And I'm not saying these are the only categories, but those are the 3 that came off the top of my head, because I can talk about like the pros and cons of those really easily. The pro of being the charismatic, very energetic storytelling, the person that we're talking about, the person that's on stage, the person that's on Instagram, like telling you how to be successful too. The pro of that is they tend to be really good on the front end. And we've already sort of talked about this, where it's like they're magnetic. They draw people in. People are drawn to them. They're pulled to them. Like, I found the right place. They get excited. They produce energy. There's a certainty that's there. Like they do really, really well on the front end. They tend to not be as strong naturally on the back end. So their retention might stink. Their results might stink. You may know, like, it's entirely possible, and this is true when I was a chiropractor. It's probably true where you're at too. I would venture to guess that the busiest chiropractor in your area is not necessarily the best. And I mean technically the best. The busiest chiropractor in your area might not even be the one who's best at retention and long-term relationship building. They may turn and burn people on a regular basis. Now, I'm not saying every busy chiropractor does this. I'm saying that if you have this magnetic personality that attracts people on the front end, where you tend to struggle is with your results and your retention and your relationships. Can you be better at those? Can you be good at those? Absolutely. But that's your foundation, and your strength is on the front end. Now, if you happen to be a technical chiropractor, like someone who's really good with your hands, someone who's really good at the technique, someone who just likes the craft of being a chiropractor, you tend to be really, really good with results. Great with results. Some of the best chiropractors I know fall into this category where they are exceptional with their hands. They are exceptional at what they do. These chiropractors oftentimes have a weaker area in the relationship aspect of things. And I'm not saying you can't be relational and be technical. I'm just saying that if we're going to categorize, like, there's these three areas: front end, technical, like results, and the relationship. If you are a technical chiropractor, you tend to be much stronger with the delivery, the results you're delivering. These are technique nerds. These are upper cervical guys. These are gondroids. These are, activator doc, that's all they do. It's a Logan Basic doc, that's all they do. And like, they are so good at it. The rehab doc that is like, they are so good at what they do. But they sometimes have an issue with relationships. Sometimes they're just kind of introverted and they don't really connect with people quickly or easily. Maybe they're a personality trait that's not as empathetic or sympathetic as they should be. Like, it's just, that can be the case. It could also, they tend to struggle on the front end. A lot of really, really technical and really, really great chiropractors who are good with their hands are super frustrated about the fact that nobody knows who they are. They're really frustrated about the fact that they get such good results. The chiropractor down the road who isn't very good at their craft gets chiropractors all the time, and they're really famous and they're really known. And it's like, why do people go to him and they don't go to me? That's the reality of a lot of chiropractors who are on the very technical side of things. Now, the third chiropractor, if we're just talking about pros and cons, is there are chiropractors out there who are really, really, really good at the human element of being a chiropractor. And this is not, I'm not talking about the front end attraction. I'm talking about, like, they get a patient, that patient sticks around for life. Now, generally, they're also decent at results too. You can't get bad results and have good retention as a general rule, but there's sort of a depth. These chiropractors are great at building a community. They tend to have small practices that are incredibly loyal. Like, they have their regulars. They don't get a lot of new patients, but the people that come and they stay, and they have 2, 3, 4 generations of people. They tend to live on referrals where they don't seem to get a lot of new patients from other things. And it might take them a while to make that connection with people. But once they do make that connection with someone, it's like, these are just lifers. If you move, your patients are going with you. You know what I mean? Like, if you leave, they're going to be talking about you 15 years later, and they're going to be bummed that you're not around anymore. Like, there's just such a depth of connection. And chiropractors who are really, really good at, like, they tend to be good at networking. They tend to be good at relationships within the community. They tend to be good with, like, relationships with their patients. Those kind of relationship-centered foundational chiropractors are great at that. And they tend to struggle a little bit more with the technical side of things sometimes. Like, they're not quite as good as the gondroid or quite as good as the upper cervical nerd, but they still get good results. And they tend to really struggle on the front end because they just don't, they emphasize genuineness. They emphasize depth of relationship, not the superficial stuff that kind of attracts people in. So they sort of have the same problem that the technical chiropractor does. Now, I say all that to say that there's pros and cons to all of it. And I'm not telling you that one's better than the other. I will tell you the one that's easier to be successful as a chiropractor, and that is the charismatic, kind of storytelling, energetic chiropractor. And the reason it's easier is because new patient volume solves all problems. And the reason why a lot of charismatic, energetic, super excited chiropractors don't bother changing their bad technique and terrible relationship building is because they get so many people on the front end, and chiropractors make most of their money on the front end that it just doesn't, it's not a big deal for them. Like if they essentially have people come in and they hit a certain volume number for most people most of the time, and then that person leaves and they don't come back, but then there's a whole bunch of people that are coming in behind them because they're just constantly bringing in new people and they're constantly attracting people and they just don't have that problem. It sort of masks all the problems on the back end, which is why you see practices like this. And those are the people that stand up in front of everybody at the seminars, or they go on the podcast circuit, or they host podcasts or whatever, and they're going to tell you their success formula for being successful. The problem is, if you happen to be a more technical chiropractor, or you happen to be a more relational chiropractor, and you try to be that person, it's just soul sucking, even if you manage to do it, or you just fail because you just can't do it. So what's the smarter thing to do? I think that it's really, really important for every chiropractor to just be honest about what is your God-given talent. Where are you naturally good? That does not mean that you can't improve in other areas, but where are you naturally good? What is something that you thrive at more easily than other people? If you're naturally a connector, so I'll kind of give you an example in my own life and kind of how this works. I would put myself in the technical category of this group. I have some extrovert kind of skills and kind of marketing skills. I had good relationships with my patients from a retention standpoint and things like that. But the thing that I felt best about was I loved upper cervical. I was really good at it. I was good with my hands. Like I'm more of a technician than I was in terms of like, I'm better with my hands than I am with people and than I am with like outreach, like being that guy who's like, come see me, listen to what I say. I'm the best. I know everything. So that's sort of where I fall. Now, my ex-wife was a chiropractor also. Now, I don't talk about her a lot because one, she's my ex-wife. So, why would I? But two is that she never practiced. Like we met when she was in school. She finished up school. We started making babies. Like she just never practiced. She would, however, help in my practice occasionally. And the superpower that she brought to the practice was the fact that she was more of a connector person. So where I was more technical. Now, neither one of us were that like energetic, charismatic, like 50 new patients a month coming in because we're just attracting them like magnets. Like neither one of us had that personality. But I was more technical and got really good results with my patients with a decent ability to kind of connect and retain people. She was someone who really, really liked building relationships within the community. So she would go out and meet other business owners and talk to other people. And because of that, I built relationships that I probably wouldn't have built otherwise because it just wasn't my natural strong suit. I say all that to say this, like figure out where you fall and then figure out a strategy to maximize that. The area where you're naturally good is going to be the foundation on which you build your success. So if you happen to be a charismatic person, then figure out how to maximize that and then have systems and habits and things in place, or possibly even hire other people to help you compensate for the areas that you are weak to bring those up to an acceptable level. One of the things that I fundamentally disagree with advice that is often given is that people look at someone who sucks at something and they tell them to just work on, you suck at this, work on it. You suck at this, work on it. I think generally speaking, human beings go from sucking and you work really hard and then you suck less. The people who are great at things and the things you're great at are going to be the things that make a difference in your life, not the things that you're mediocre at. And so if you want to move the needle in your life from a business standpoint, personal standpoint, anything like that, you always want to identify the things you're naturally good at and figure out ways to become great at those things and figure out how to leverage those great things to make a massive impact in your life. If you look at all the stuff that you are crappy at and that you suck at, and you spend all of your life trying to go from sucking to sucking less, just because you suck less at something, it's not going to significantly move the needle in your life. I do think that if you suck at something that you should be better at, that you should work at being better at it, or you should bring someone in to help you with that thing so that you could just let them be better at it and you don't have to suck. I disagree that you should look at someone who has a completely different gifting, a completely different talent, a completely different situation, and a completely different everything than you. Listen to their advice about how to be successful, and then you should try to figure out how to do that when you're a million miles away. It doesn't make any sense. What makes more sense for you, and this is why I said originally that like their success formula isn't necessarily your success formula. And I would actually argue that their success formula isn't your success formula, even if you have a similar personality. Like your situation is going to be different. The timing is going to be different. There are some successes that are very difficult to replicate if you're not doing what they did when they did it and where they did it. I mean, this is true for online. Like you could say like, well, you know, if somebody that became successful on YouTube from 20 years ago is going to come to you and say, well, here's how I did it. Here's how you can be successful too. It's like, yeah, you started your YouTube channel when there was 3 chiropractors online and you were one of them. Like that's a completely different situation than what we have now. Or you could tell someone, that would be like me telling someone who I'm working with and I'm doing local SEO. If I show them an example of one of my docs who's in a small town in Tennessee, and this is a real thing, where it's like I started changing his stuff. He's a brand new doc. I started changing his stuff and he went from non-existent on the Google Maps to being first across the board for the most important keywords. And it was less than 2 weeks. He was a chiropractor in a small town in Tennessee. That is not fair. It is not even remotely fair or honest for me to show that to a chiropractor in Frisco or in Dallas or in Chicago or in Los Angeles and say, look at what I did for them. If I could do it, you can do it. If I can do it for them, I can do it for you. That's not true because I'm completely disregarding timing and situation. It's not the same, even if I do the exact same thing. It's not the same. And to say it's going to get the same results is not being honest and not being fair. So what you need to do is you need to be honest about where your strengths are at and look for opportunities to leverage those strengths to get the maximum amount from your practice. If you're a technician, take some videos. Like I would look at someone like Strat Polson, which I've had on the podcast a couple times. He's a website client of mine. I don't think he minds me saying that. And he's really, really does well on Instagram. But I would put him in a technician category. Now I might be wrong, but he doesn't have that. He does put a lot of content out online, but it's not that like storytelling, charismatic energy. He doesn't have that sort of energy. He's a technician and he's got really good habits and he has really good systems in place. But the reason he teaches people how to adjust and the reason he teaches people techniques and the reason he films himself doing adjustments is because he's a technician. So he's benefiting and he's getting a lot of people on the front end, but it's because he's a technician, not because he changed his personality to be someone that he's not. And he's like, oh, everybody like and subscribe. You know, he's not doing that. And so if you figure out what your superpower is and then figure out how to leverage it, that's where you're going to get the most benefit. If you take advice from people that are a completely different situation, different personality, and you try to be them, you're just going to freaking hate your life. So, and also the other thing is it's important that when you're honest about who you are, when you're listening to people's advice, and this includes me, if you listen to my podcast and I give you some advice that is like Jerry's an introvert and a technician or whatever, if it's something that I'm telling you that you're like, wow, that seems very personality specific. Like that seems like something that he does or he says because of his own personality or maybe his own deficiencies. And that doesn't apply to me because I have a different skill set. I have a different personality. I have different talents and I can do this other thing. It's your responsibility to do that. You're responsible for you. I know self-responsibility is not like a popular topic now, but you need to take responsibility for your actions. You need to take responsibility for your own practice and your own success. And it starts with being honest with who you are. And then it starts also, next kind of step is with a little bit of discernment. And that's the whole point of this podcast really, is to just give you some information to just help you be more discerning when you're listening to advice, because we live in a world that is absolutely cram-packed full of advice. Instagram and TikTok and Facebook groups and YouTube and podcasts. And I know I'm one of those people that's giving advice, but I don't think my advice is for everyone. I don't think everyone that's a chiropractor is a good fit for me. Heck, I had a guy email me yesterday that just based on words he put in his email, I was like, I'm not your guy. Like, just not. And I'm not going to, I didn't even respond to him because I'm so sure that I'm not your guy. And there was just some things he said, and I'm just like, I'm not your guy. And maybe I should respond. I'm not going to. I get the feeling that that email was sent to a lot of different people, not just me. But it's, I'm not for everybody. And the people that act like they are for everybody, they're just selling you something. They're just trying to make money. They're not as concerned about you being successful and you winning as they are themselves winning. You need to be able to recognize that stuff. And if you don't recognize that stuff, if somebody's constantly telling you the positive, selling, and they're never telling you the flip side. They never tell you like, hey, this is what may not happen. This is what could happen. This is the good. This is the bad. Here's the pros. I know that's not the stuff that's told in selling, but that's being honest. And when someone's not being honest with you and they're just telling you all the positive things and none of the negative, you have to exercise discernment. Because most people that are going to sell you something and they're going to make a buck off of you, they're not going to do it for you. So you have to do that. I said this already, but I'm going to say it again because I think it's one of my main points of this podcast. And then we're going to wrap this up. Your areas of weakness are not going to be the foundation of your success. Improve them, get better at them, work on them, bring other people in to do those things. Like the reason I have an accountant and the reason I have a tax person, you know what I mean? Like there's things I just don't do. I'm guilty of doing a lot of things, maybe even some things I shouldn't do because I'm surprisingly handy for someone who doesn't have training in a lot of areas. With that said, it's just good to know when you're outside your lane. And sometimes you just got to bring someone else in to help. You got to bring somebody else in to do stuff for you that maybe you shouldn't be doing. And if it's something that you really, 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 really need in your practice and you just have to get better at it, then get better at it. But don't assume that something that you are terrible at is ever going to be the thing. It's never going to be a home run. You can go from striking out to striking out less, but you're not going to be like a Hall of Famer at the thing that you suck at. That's just not how it is. So figure out what you're good at, figure out how to be great at it, and figure out how to leverage it. The things you stink at, get better at. Or have somebody else do it. And be discerning when you're listening to advice, including mine. All right, guys, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing the podcast with other chiropractors. If you know someone who would like to, who would benefit from the podcast, who isn't listening, please share it with them. I'd really appreciate it. If you'd like to leave a review in either Apple Podcasts or on Google, that would be awesome. I always love when people leave reviews. If you want some help with your website and SEO, reach out to me through Rocket Chiro. I will talk to you guys on the next episode. See ya.